We only have a couple of discussion items today. One of them is the farmer's market, and Emily will go ahead and brief us on that.
Thank you. So I will put this excuse me. You have this at your places too. So this is a continuation from our conversation at the end of November. Like we would have customarily done anyway, to give you a review of the farmers market performance in the current year. We did that. Proposed to you the concept of moving the market from a Saturday to a Thursday evening. The direction that we heard from that meeting, there's pros and cons, but to go out and get more specific feedback from our vendors about how that plan would work for them, what they would think of it, so we could kind of have a sense, a forecast for kind of what our vendor numbers looked like for 2018 with either of those plans. We did that, and I've summarized it here for you all. You see, I mean, the main thing to point out really is the number of red columns here, which is really, it's the Saturday column, and it's the vendors were losing. Their plans have changed. They've moved on, or they're consolidating their efforts. Like in the case of the Peaceful Hills Farm, you know, expanding family. We know we can't be at every market in town. We're going to really consolidate. Parkville is where we've been the longest and have our biggest customer base. We're also doing the drop-off locations. They do drop-offs at one other Missouri location and then Brookside Market. And they know that they can make more money, you know, more efficiently by pre-orders and a drop-off rather than having their family split up and stand at a market for all those hours each Saturday. So, you know, they're really big supporters of us. They, you know, send their regards and love kind of the progressive stance, you know, the kind of the social media and the text message updates and things we're doing feels really good to them, but they have a really solid foundation in Parkville. It's where they've been the longest. And so you'll see them say that Thursdays they would likely not come every week, but if we did some sort of big event, they would look at participating, especially if they could offer samples or like a ready-to-eat option or kind of play off their meat products that could really draw in some good. So that's just one example of some sort of, you know, the vendors who are thinking about what makes most sense for their business, and her, you know, through almost no fault of our own other than just lower sales than other places or less efficient sales for their time invested, are choosing other things. Same thing, expanding family is the case with Bolin Farms. They are in Olathe and are also doing quite a bit of business from their farm. Directly, that whole come to the farm, experience the outdoors, you know, take your family. They're seeing a lot of sale increase in that respect as well. Their daughter was who was selling with us as an extension of their work in Olathe, and she's expecting and doesn't want to do it in 2018. You know, so just shaky ground for us, rolling out the exact same market onto the Saturday plan, just as we've done for the 4th year. And so coming to you saying, we've never very well established what success looks like for the Mission Farm and Flower Market. Where do we feel, I think everyone has fond feeling toward the market and is pleased that we have it and people enjoy coming to it. But if it shrinks and if we can only guarantee for you, you know, try as we might, if our vendor number comes down to, for example, I mean, I think it's feasible that you could have anywhere from like 3 to 5 actual vendors along with an information tent and a community tent. I mean, we can always build on that with like our nonprofit tents so that you have more rooftops, but in terms of true vendors, if I said to you, I can't guarantee that we hit an average of more than 5, you know, or does that feel okay, is really the question, I think. Because we can do Saturday. We know what Saturday feels like. We know people enjoy it. We know that they like coming, and you know, there's regular customers who have been really loyal and who come and they like it part of their morning routine. They bring the strollers and the dogs and they listen to music and they get their morning coffee, and all of that feels really good. But if we are saying that we're seeing these signs, do you want us to proceed and still work as hard as we can to bring new folks in? And that's certainly always on our radar. Is that okay? The alternative to that, we were just proposing in November, was if that doesn't feel good, is there a niche that the Mission Farm and Flower Market could fill that isn't happening in several other cities at the same exact time that is dividing our vendor base. So if you've already got a vendor who's committed to working in Parkville on Saturdays, or the City Market or Overland Park Market on Saturdays, but you give them an option to come on Thursday, would they be interested in a second market? And would that just lower the competition for us, both in terms of customers and in terms of vendors? That's not proven, you know, that would be a new experiment, but it was kind of the concept of bringing it to you was to say, we have some writing on the wall for Saturday. Do you want us to experiment with Thursday? As you see, there's a lot of shaky ground on Thursday too.
Yeah, exactly.
So we just had...
It's just with our current.
Right.
True, and I mean, we have not done the whole, you know, we've got an 8-page list of vendors we've cold called every year, and they know we're out there. We'll do that same cold calling this year and say, hey, we've got something new on the horizon here. Would you be willing to come with us on Thursday? No guarantees, especially if the trend for vendors themselves is other alternative models of things, whether they're rolling in and it's not kind of an expansion phase, you know, metro-wide or even nationwide with the trends that we're seeing in farmers markets. So we don't have numbers for you that would show that, hey, if we move it to Thursday, we've got 6 new vendors and they're signing on the dotted line and ready to go. It's a possibility. We also know that our food truck events, you know, are so popular that people are willing, at least for the one-time kind of special event, which I realize is totally different than a weekly, small-scale activity, do come out and enjoy being around and at that time of day. We also know we have great office population and mission, and I think what we would do in that strategy is we'd really work hard with our bigger employers to make sure we were reaching in and talking to those employees and seeing if we could get in their employee newsletters, or just really trying to work those relationships to make sure that they knew and kind of started building the habit of coming down. We also would emphasize the food truck event, you know, the food truck aspect, make sure you always had 2 kind of full dinner options, have a picnic table set up, and then have the shopping be there too. We know we can emphasize the art better than we have in the past. The question I have there, though, is if those artists are used to doing things like the Maker Fair at Union Station or the Plaza Art Fair, any of those bigger events, the money for their time again at a market our scale will be lower. Not saying that they won't come, and we've already had some success with the artists that do show up, but it's still a different offer to them. Come and get your name out there and we'll promote you in our email newsletter, but in terms of sales per hour that you can expect, it's modest. I mean, that's always been the scale of our market. So I think we're in a very comfortable place when we were like the incubator market, you know, for the new bakers or people who are just getting started. We're the perfect fit because we're so approachable and easy to get in. You can, you know, kind of learn your craft with us. And as long as we can make sure that there's a batch of those people coming in, we could always have that kind of space. But we just need to, you know, make sure. So right now, you know, the Jelly Man is kind of our, I would call him our anchor tenant. 2 booths. They sell kind of everything. They have a variety of produce. They have the baked goods, the jams. They're a fixture at our market. They've been there all 3 years. They have a very devoted following from people that shopped with them in Shawnee and came over with them. They're very adamantly opposed to moving to Thursday. I talked, you know, I've had multiple conversations and they were considering it and then not considering it and then just really thinking that they're customers and they have always been a Saturday vendor and feeling like that's their place for them. They also tell me each year that they don't know that this is the last year they're going to be doing this. So, I mean, I think if we decided that the right decision for Mission was to move to a Thursday, that we should try to convince them that we had a really great option for them and that they were always welcome, but that should be the deciding factor. On the other hand, if everyone wants produce vendors and we have, you know, just a couple of those and one of them is saying we don't want to move, is that the decision point that we want to use? The alternative produce person we've got is the New Roots for Refugees program run by Catholic Charities. They're extremely reliable. They're, you know, they have an amazing quality of what they grow here locally. You know, it's a feel-good project with refugees learning those marketing skills and growing skills. So they'd be with us every week. They start in June, so you know they wait until more is available and they start selling in June through September. So that would be a more limited season than when we did last year. But they were attracted to Thursday because their staff runs their produce out to all of the different markets where their farmers are working. So for them, it's more convenient to get to us on a Thursday. They would anticipate lower revenues, they said, on a Thursday, but that's okay too because this is a training program and they sell what they tailor their quantities to what they sell at any given time. You see sort of like the honey vendor, Noachek, he's with us as he's been all 3 years and would be again this coming year, but he's only here every other week. So if you see a green box on the Saturday or the Thursday, it's not all, that they're going to be there every week. We have vendors like 2L Farms who sells the grass-fed beef and jam. She was very, very sporadic this year. Part of the reason was that she travels a lot on Saturdays and has family in town, and she just, her weekends are busy. And then she also had kind of a fluke thing that kept her out for the last few months. But so she was really inconsistent. So she said a Thursday would be excellent because it just wouldn't have those kinds of vacation and travel conflicts right out of the gate. Then on the flip side, you have, so this woman just emailed me a couple weeks ago, and she's interested. She makes gluten-free baked products, and it was a cold email. I have never heard of this person. I don't know how she found us. She's interested in just getting started. So she could take off and go gangbusters, or she could try it once and hate it and never come back. But she was only available on Saturdays because she works 8 to 5. So if we're asking her to come and sell at 4:30 on a Thursday, and that means coming and setting up at 3:30, it's just not something she can do because she has an 8 to 5 job. So it's just, I just kind of want to be really, really clear about what we're hearing. And I think the question kind of too, I think everyone has had kind of a special experience at the Mission Department Flower Market. We love it. The grass, the music, the neighbors, the talking with them, all that feeling is still really there. I'm just nervous about kind of a spiral if we have fewer vendors, and then even our biggest supporters, our biggest fans who love coming out kind of say to themselves, well, they're just not the same amount of things that used to be, and then the vendors aren't as happy, and it just, or is it fine for you all if we had just those few vendors and we just said, we're still going to have the music, you can still come and get the experience, you might only be able to shop at a few booths, but that's always kind of what we've been, and just picture what but maybe a little smaller. And we can do either. And Thursday, I think, was kind of the thing where we roll the dice and we just sort of go big guns on this other thing, try this Thursday thing, and see where it takes us. But it's not the comfort level I was hoping to come back with to say, Thursday looks really promising, let's do it. It's just kind of, I think we have kind of two options, and both of them have a little bit of pro and a little bit of con.
Well, you looking for feedback here or what?
Yes, we're really kind of up against it now. We need to make some decisions so we can get some promotion. We would be starting to roll out calls for vendors, doing our cold calling, getting on kind of all the national and state level farmers market directories, and we need to post our hours, all those things. So if you feel comfortable kind of talking through getting to a decision would be great.
I think, just my opinion, ladies and gentlemen, but the Saturdays, I feel like we're kind of not beating a dead horse, but we're beating a really, really sick horse there. And I think...
A beloved sick horse.
What?
A beloved sick horse.
Yes, but it's sad to hear. But the few times that we've done the food truck events on weeknights have been great. Great turnouts. I think these people might be pleasantly surprised with the turnout they get on the Thursday market, and some of these people that are willing to take a risk, that's a good thing. Some of the other guys, like the Jelly Man, he may change his mind. He may say, well, I can do Saturdays at Merriam or whatever, and I'll come out and give Thursday a try. He may be pleasantly surprised as well. And I think it's definitely worth the risk. I think, like you said, you've got this vicious spiral going on Saturdays. I don't see that changing. You're the one that makes all those phone calls and stuff, You got 8 pages of them to go through, and the response you get it's tough. There's a lot of Saturday markets out there. So this is something new, something different. I think it's definitely worth a shot.
But what does that look like to you? Because it's not a full, I'm assuming that's not the full-blown food truck event that we've done, you know,
No.
2 or 3 times a year, right?
No.
It's kind of, I think in November, we talked a little bit about kind of
But
smaller
2 or 3
market, music, right? Potentially the beer garden or
I
what?
think that's the central question.
Okay.
Honestly, I think if we're gonna do it Thursday nights and we can get some commitment that there'll be some food vendors and somebody to sell some beer there,
Yeah,
I think it'll do great.
I do too.
If you don't get the food and beer there, probably not gonna really.
And then you're looking at that then every Thursday night having
Probably.
that, okay.
But the
Maybe
full
we can-
food trucks, or like have a couple every month and then a couple every time and every so often have more.
Yeah, I mean, leave it up to, you know, if it turns out that we have huge demand
People that wanna
after a
come.
few weeks, then we need to go try to get more food trucks.
Yeah, the nice thing, like Ash and Blue, the grilled cheese, you know, everyone loves. We knew they're gonna go big. They're exploding, and they've put their foot into Overland Park, and that's how it works. Where you get to be invited to go there Wednesdays, and then you get a spot on Saturday. They're definitely looking and hoping for a spot on Saturdays there. So they would not be available to us on a Saturday, but they would be on a Thursday, and they'd be there nearly every week. I think. I mean, they're committed to us. They live working with us. And I think, so you just kind of count them in, and then you can kind of work out and have a rotation of other dining options. I would be interested to kind of test your appetite for any kind of additional shade. If we're talking, or just we should talk again, I think, about that for the fact that we'd be talking in the heat of the summer meeting, and I talked with Sue Lau, who is with GF+1, the gluten-free products, and she participates in the Waldo Farmers Market now. They're under trees. They start at 3 o'clock, and she said 3 o'clock is just too hot. And so I said, no, we would be targeting kind of the after-work crowd, I think overlapping the 5 o'clock hour, like we did 5:30 to 8 or something like that, so that you had the option of, going home, changing clothes, grabbing your spouse, coming back out, or swinging by on your way home from work. With friends or whatever, but we'd have to look, because I think that beer garden feel, being able to socialize and have a seat and eat properly, so you think about it as a dinner option, is really important. And then we would position the farmer vendors so that you really had to walk by them, and we really would incorporate them to make sure.
Food trucks are going to draw the people.
Yeah.
And the farmers market people that show up to sell, they're going to be like, wow, this is pretty good.
Yeah.
If you're there waiting
Yeah.
for your burritos or whatever you're in line for, and you see a couple of vendors, hey, you're going to go check them out. You're going to check them all out.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think that's where the crafts would be really great. So you're browsing and shopping, you may pick up some honey, or but also too the crafting. I do think, anything that we do every week will be smaller than the things we do that are all blowouts. So, I think we can't expect anything like the crowds that we have seen when we only have it a couple times a year, and it's like the can't miss event that month.
Is it feasible to do it twice a month instead of every week? Or?
It is. If you get inconsistent, I think the vendors suffer a little, because they'd be growing on. Some who grow things or prepare they would like that reliability, and I think from a marketing perspective it'd be harder, is the market tonight or not tonight, and then so I think we kind of want to build in the habit that it would be like, oh, it's Thursday, great, let's come, I think that's my instinct.
Well, I think it'd be worth doing it, starting on the Thursdays, doing it every week on Thursday, and see how it goes. What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah, back to Saturday. I don't know.
Well, you don't even have to go back Saturday. If Saturdays are dying, and Thursday wasn't an option, then the market would end after your, next year when you were down to 3 vendors.
Yeah.
So if the same thing happens on Thursday, you're in the same boat.
Yeah.
But it's such a different deal, such a twist. I think we'll all be pleasantly surprised.
And present.
Maybe present.
I'm counting on you all to be present.
Yes, volunteers would be more available. I don't have.
Well, that's the thing. Even our market coordinators, they travel with their families on the weekends, so they're shuffling the weekends, and they say, oh, Thursdays, be here all the time, no problem,
Yeah.
So that was a benefit also, even thinking that, just logistically, I think people log out, your weekends just get taken, off the table. We had, lots of our ambassadors say the same thing, I'm out of town that weekend. So,
I think you're gonna be surprised when you start through your 8 pages
yeah,
of
Could be.
contacting people.
yeah. And what I think,
Because 7.5 pages of those people have told you no in the past.
yeah,
And now you're gonna start picking up a few that go,
Yeah,
Thursday.
I can do that. Yeah, I think so too.
Try it.
And we did, we started toying around, at the end of this past season with like the puns and the text messages, and we were trying to get like a little funkier, and got really positive response to that. Like, I mean, the gold foil t-shirts on the black. So I think there's a niche there too, where we could be like the cool market.
Well, I was thinking too with the music element already, like you kind of pitched it as a market and summer concert series.
Yeah.
Like, kind of played up
True.
that element as
Yeah.
well.
That'd be
You're
great.
trying to get
Some
people coming from the
different music
offices.
on
Yeah.
Thursday
Yeah.
evening, too.
That's a great idea. Would you be okay with a shortened season if we started with New Routes for Refugees starting in June instead
Yes,
of in May?
As a regular market volunteer, the season was entirely too long.
Mhm.
Like towards the
Yeah.
end, there
No one
was
was there.
3 vendors. There
Yes.
was, it was really,
Yes.
really hard and embarrassing.
Yeah.
But in the height of it, people
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
And it's
I mean, I do
great.
think that's it true. I mean, everybody comes, it's like, oh, the market, and it's just, and you just watch it,
Right.
because you get, distracted. There's a million other things. So I would be kind of proposing then, like June through September. So we'd be down to just the summer months, really, which works really well with marketing like a summer concert series, that kind of
Right.
feel.
What if we started like a little bit smaller? I know we want the consistency with the vendors, but like 3rd Thursdays or something, like first Fridays or I don't know, first
Yeah.
Thursdays. Some sort of clever little tagline to where it's
Mhm.
not super overwhelming and we don't get discouraged by like a ton of people and then not so many people other
Mhm.
weeks.
Yeah, we could. I think.
You talking about doing it like once a month?
Yeah, like a 3rd Thursday. But I mean, if we're only doing.
Yeah, I like weekdays.
I think that would be a really good plan for 2019 if the 2018 plan
Yeah.
doesn't work. Because then you could really just say, what we're doing? We're doing a concert series and we're going to go all out and we're doing it
Yeah.
monthly.
Yeah.
But we would not be targeting then farmers market vendors.
Yeah.
We
Right.
would just be doing food,
Food
beer,
trucks.
music.
A band,
Yeah.
let's party.
Yeah. That's what I'm trying to do.
Party
Trying to
rider.
bring a party on there.
Yes. Okay. Well, if that sounds good, we can certainly execute. We can go for it.
Great. Does anybody else have any questions, discussion?
Darcy?
Emily, we can talk more about this later, but I was just going to see if you're reaching out to any of the business incubators or like the Innovation Center out in Independence, Missouri.
Great idea. We have not.
Okay, so like Kansas City Cupcakes came out of there. They have
Yeah.
4 kitchens in there, and
Yeah.
so these are like really early startups that are looking for,
Yes.
places to vend, and we could be maybe the farmers
Yeah,
market
the launch.
incubator,
Yeah.
I know that it's an ideal right now, but maybe it could
Mm-hmm.
kind of jump us off there.
Oh,
Is
that's
that the place where the farmers come to die?
We launched them. Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Emily. All right, next up is Mr. Belger in regards to the snow removal policy.
Thank you very much. I know to some of you this may kind of sound like an old song, but I'm going to sing it anyway. I'll preface this by saying that all this information is out on our website too for everybody to see. Just a quick rundown of our process of snow removal. We begin with kind of a procedural review and training in-house. So we take all the staff, we all get out in the shop, and we go over who's on what crew, shift assignments, go over the routes. The guys actually get in trucks and drive their routes looking for things that may have changed or out of the ordinary that need to get fixed. We do have an on-call procedure, so everyone has to have their cell phone on, and there's a 2-hour window to get from home to here when you were called in for snow removal. We go over all the operations and maintenance of the trucks. The trucks, the plows, the spreaders, their controls, how they're calibrated, loading salt, our radio communication with each other and the police, vehicle and equipment repairs. That comes up quite often, so that's a very important one to hit on, what happens if something goes wrong with the truck. And also preventative maintenance of the vehicles. After we get done, we take all the vehicles in, tear them down, wash them off, clean them up, and get them ready for the next round. We go over the salt application procedure, which you would think wouldn't be all that complicated, but there are certain times where more or less is needed depending on the weather conditions. So we review all that and go over that with everybody so we're all on the same page. And probably one of the most important things is being safe. We do vehicle and equipment pre-checks every time you start your shift. So guy comes in from one shift, parks the truck, checks everything. Next guy comes out, he checks the truck too. Goes over all the safety procedures with the truck to make sure that everything's in proper working order. Another important one is dealing with the public. I tell our folks who are out in the field that if someone has an issue, to refer them to us. We prefer to deal with a lot of those situations. And also assisting motorists. During snow events, many people get stuck. Cars break down, different things happen. Our policy is to contact the police department and have them come out. Typically, we'll stay close until the police arrive. We don't let anyone ride in our trucks or anything like that. So if it is a medical emergency, of course it's called 911. There have been scenarios where we have let someone sit in the truck and wait for the police to come. I won't cover everything. There is a sheet of weather conditions and strategy that just kind of outlines what we do as far as applying salt or plowing under certain weather conditions. We have a crew and shift assignment sheet in there. We've got 4 crew members on each crew. We run a day crew and a night crew. They're on from 7 to 7. We switch monthly, day crew and night crew. A few years ago, you'd have folks that wanted to stay on the day crew or wanted to stay on the night crew, and then it ended up going, well, hey, night crew gets all the overtime and we don't. So in order to try to keep things fair, we swap those crews from month to month. And then the next few pages are going to be our routes. We have 2 arterial routes, which are your main streets, your Lamar's, Johnson Drives, Fox Ridge, Martway, Knoll, Row. We use big trucks for those routes. These route descriptions and maps kind of give a breakdown of how to attack that route for someone that's kind of new. It shows our number 1, 2, and 3 priority streets. Streets are ranked by priority based on traffic, terrain. So if you've got a street that's a cul-de-sac, for instance, where there's not a lot of traffic and it's flat, it's going to be lower down on the priority list than a street that's got a high average daily traffic, that's got hills and corners and things like that. So that's how those are ranked. We attack them that way. The one thing I will say, just kind of as a disclaimer, every storm's different. So in a perfect world, this is kind of the way we'd go about it, but every storm you're tweaking, adjusting, reacting to things that are happening. So this isn't the end-all be-all, but it's just a good outline for how to do things when you're out in a truck. The other routes that we have are your residential routes. We break those up, north side of town and south side of town. The dividing line's Johnson Drive. So again, we've got 1, 2, 3 priority streets. There's been cases where the north side takes a little bit longer than the south side, so if whoever's planning on the south side gets done, they'll jump over on the north side and help get that all cleared out. So again, one of those things where we kind of just adjust based on what's happening. A couple things to go over that will probably be most of the questions that you get. First is Johnson Drive. Johnson Drive, we do plow the parking spaces in downtown. So we're responsible for clearing those parking spaces. A lot of times we have the night shift do that because you don't have any cars parked down there. There have been moments where we get the snow stacked so high that it becomes hard to see pulling out an intersection. So what we do in that scenario is, again, on a night crew, we'll send the loader up there and actually pick up the snow off the corners and haul it to the open lotted outlook and pile it there, let it melt, so that we can get people seeing around those piles again. Here a few years back, when we got a 12-inch snow and a 10-inch snow within a week of each other, we were hauling a lot of snow. So that's one of the main questions that we get a lot is the parking spaces and the visibility on Johnson Drive. The other thing to touch on Johnson Drive is we do not plow the sidewalks.
Or shovel the sidewalks.
Or shovel the sidewalks. The adjacent property owner is responsible for clearing the snow off the sidewalks. That's the case citywide. Sidewalks are cleared by the adjacent property owner. There are a few instances that we do plow some sidewalks. That's actually what I'm going to hit on next. We have some miscellaneous snow removal locations that we call it. You'll see them ranked 1 through 10. First being the community center. We help plow the lot at the community center here the past few years. Brian Sullivan has been a savior. We've donated a truck for him to go up and help us get that cleared out. And once he gets that cleared out, we run through and treat everything. So definitely appreciate Brian's help with that. Second, you'll see this building gets snow removed from it. So the police station parking lot across the street, parking lot next to the pool, and the sidewalks around this building. Those miscellaneous sidewalks that I was hitting on just a little bit earlier are school routes for kids walking to school. So up Lamar, a bit of 52nd Street. For Rushton, we plow the trail through Waterworks Park for kids that come from the south that walk to Rushton. An interesting fact that I didn't know until a few years ago, there is one bus that serves Rushton Elementary School. That's on a dedicated route, and those are the only kids that get picked up. Everybody else either gets dropped off by their parents or they walk to school. So that's why that becomes important in getting kids to school. The other area that we plow is along Row, adjacent to Highlands. We do the west side of the street. Fairway owns the east side of the street, so sometimes they plow their side, but most of the times they don't.
Do we push our snow over that side?
I like to. Bill Stocksville really likes when I do that. And then we kind of come down to the last portion of the things that we are responsible for as far as miscellaneous snow removal, and that's the trails and parks. Oftentimes, you know, we want to make sure that the streets are clear, the parking lots are good, kids can get to school, and then we'll jump in and clear the trails. Rock Creek Trail, Turkey Creek Trail, or Rock Creek Trail, Knoll Trail, and then all the park trails and parking lots. So that's basically the short version of that. If anybody has any questions, I'd be absolutely happy to answer.
I do. Do we have any new guys that haven't plowed snow for us yet?
We do.
And do they get any extra training as far as, here, I want you to run out with the plow on, even though there's no snow on the ground, and let's...
They get the pleasure of riding around with me.
Oh, yeah.
The better question is, do we have anybody left who has actually plowed snow for
We
us?
do.
Okay, like
Two.
two out of those.
2 out of 8 or...
Yes.
We have, well, yeah, 2
It
that
hasn't
have
snowed.
had a lot of experience.
Well, that's true, yeah, it hasn't.
A few that have minimal experience. I mean, they've been part of the small events that we've had over the last couple of years. So, I mean, it gets them out there and driving, which I think is a good thing. It gives them the opportunity to see how that route actually works when it is snowing. But we do have a couple of new crew members that, like I said, get to hang out with me for a while, or Brent. And what we're going to do is when we have an event that kind of warrants us being with them. I'll drive, they'll sit shotgun, we'll go through the route, we'll switch spots, we'll let them plow, and then once everybody's kind of comfortable with everything that's going on, we'll let them out on their own.
Yeah, I thought we had a lot of new guys, that's all.
Do we have, like, a lot of cities are using that GPS thing and it can show them, you know, exactly what streets are in the layout, or, and you can actually watch it on their website. I mean, I think it would be riveting.
No, we,
Yes.
No contract.
where's that guy at?
Where are they at now?
She's not kidding when she
Watch
She
the
puts it
little,
on pause.
watch the little truck icon move around on the map. No, we don't. We've talked about it in the past. My feeling is, well, two things.
Okay.
One, we've never had a real big issue with not getting somewhere. Our goal is to have the snow cleared 24 hours after the snow stops. So curb to curb, cleared, treated now. It may not all be gone, depending on the weather, but our goal is to have everything streetwise opened up within 24 hours after the snow stops.
I'm just wondering if it would be helpful because of the new hire situation, and, you know, with we've had a couple of seasons of pretty non-eventful.
Yeah. The other thing I was gonna say is I feel like that's me and Brent's responsibility to make sure that they succeed. Brent's really tuned into what everybody's doing. He's been in that situation before, which is a benefit. So have I, which really helps. It's hard to tell folks what to go do if you haven't done it before. I feel pretty comfortable that we have a pretty good handle on it. If it did start becoming an issue, I think it would be something that was real beneficial. I know in some other cities there's been some pushback of, you know, you're kind of big brother in me. You don't trust me.
Okay, sure.
It's not, and I always tell our folks when we talk about it, it's not that. If you're doing the right thing, it shouldn't matter. And it's our way of just being open. Like I said, we really haven't had an issue. I mean, we've been through plows breaking down, you know, 2 or 3 trucks are down, and, you know, it's, you pick up the slack. Yeah, and you know, I'm lucky to have a crew that has that mindset of, let's get out there and get it done. So,
What about, John, challenges that you encounter? We try to get the word out, I know, about parking, on-street parking when it snows, but are
yeah,
there areas where we have issues with that?
mainly in the residential areas. One arterial that sometimes you have trouble with is Fox Ridge because people can't make it up the hill at the falls. So they all come and
Oh, is that right?
park along the street at Fox Ridge.
With narrowing that other part of Fox Ridge, do you think that's going to be a problem?
There's no on-street parking now.
That's
in that,
true.
in
but I mean,
that
there are
section. So
people, you know, just can't make it up there.
Right. I truly think that not having that on-street parking through that section that we did is going to be a real benefit.
Perfect. Very.
So I think that's going to be a good thing. You know, we've run into situations where you get in a residential neighborhood and you got 2 cars parked on the street right across the street from each other. We've always told the crew, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, back up. Just back out of that situation. When you do back up, which we try not to do very often, make sure you know what's behind you.
Good idea.
But I would rather I would rather somebody radio to me and say, hey John, I'm in a pinch, can you come spot me while I back out of here? And, you know, we make that perfectly clear with them. Instead of trying to squeeze through 2 cars and, you know, run a plow down the side of a truck. I mean, just hold on a minute, we'll get there and we'll get you backed out.
And I had a constituent that, that suggested we have like an emergency number that people can call in case their street. I'm just passing that comment on to you all. I'm not sure, you know, we had that event that happened. I appreciate you getting back to me very quickly.
Yeah.
You know, with that cul-de-sac situation. But I didn't know what's the protocol to go through. If we have somebody that calls and says, you know, you haven't done my street, what are we supposed to then do? I was kind of at a, okay, I'll try to get a hold of you, and I don't have, you know, your direct number. Well, I called Public Works, you know, I got your voicemail.
Right.
Then I emailed you, and you responded very quickly. I appreciate that. And it got taken care of. But I just wondered what the protocol was.
Laura and I talked about that a little bit the other day. One thing I want to make sure that everybody has is my cell phone number. So if somebody does call you, you have a direct line to me, and I can get that out there. We typically use the Public Works main line as our main number to call. Becomes a problem when it's, you know, Sunday and nobody's there. But a lot of these issues that we have are usually pretty easy to address. You know, one issue that we had that day was we got a minimal amount of snow, so it was to the point where it really wasn't plowable. So we had to rely on the salt to melt it off the road. And when the temperatures get as cold as they were, the salt doesn't work. Sunshine and traffic are usually our best friends. But, you know, again, it's one of those deals where it's one of those strange scenarios where it's not quite working out. But I'll make sure that all of you have my cell phone number. And if you do get a call, feel free to call me.
All right, continue.
And we'll continue to look at that. I mean, part of that challenge is just we don't have, because we're small enough, there's not somebody who's there,
Sure, absolutely.
you know, answering the phone. And so that's probably more frustrating, you know, for people to have that number. But I completely, I mean, that was the conversation after, you know, what happened with that incident about how does a citizen, short of calling you as a council member, report you know, a concern or an area that they feel like needs to be plowed, particularly. And that was kind of the new layer on the holiday. I think it was because that happened.
Yeah, it was when you guys were still on holiday.
The City Hall was, you know, even City Hall was closed because a lot of times people will end up at City Hall and we can, if they don't pick it up at Public Works, it will end up here and we can get it relayed out to them. That was just kind of like the perfect storm of there was nobody around to answer the phone. So we need to give some more thought to that.
The last couple of years, as soon as it started snowing, I just forwarded my phone directly to John's cell phone.
Perfect.
Takes care of it. Hey,
So that's where all those numbers are coming from.
I do have a question for you though.
Sure.
On Johnson Drive,
Yes.
you said that people are supposed to take care of their own sidewalks.
Yes.
Is that by ordinance, they have to
Yes.
remove that snow? And do they have to treat it for ice as well? I mean, it's like public walking.
By ordinance, they don't have to treat it. I mean,
the ordinance says remove.
The snow.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess it depends on the definition of remove. There used to be a pretty stringent time limit on that, like 5 hours after the snow stopped.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which was changed a few years ago to encourage you to remove the snow from your sidewalk. I don't know that we have, I mean, personally, I haven't had a lot of requests or phone calls about the lack of removal. I don't know if James and Nilo may get some. That's a question I probably have to ask them. But everybody's usually pretty diligent about
Or the-
getting it all removed.
Well, I mean, the fact is, we just don't, I mean, we know from looking at the sidewalk inventory, there's so many areas of town where we don't have any sidewalks that it just isn't an issue for people. There's nothing for them to go out and clear regardless. So, you aren't dealing with that in Millhaven or Countryside or, essentially there are no sidewalks in Olive Ward, in Olive Ward 3, so,
Well,
except in the,
I was
commercial areas.
Specifically talking about Johnson Drive,
Yeah.
though, in front of the businesses. You find a place to park, you're not necessarily parking in front of the business you're going to.
Right.
You may have to
You
walk.
may have to walk a ways.
A lot of those
We got ice.
businesses get together, or they have the property owner. I mean, the block of Dearborn, or the block between Dearborn and Beverly, I mean, you have one property owner for the majority of that block.
Right.
And typically what they do is they hire a contractor to come in and
I haven't heard any complaints about it at all. I
Yeah,
just
we don't
was
get very
curious
many.
if
Yep.
we-
Yeah, we would go down and encourage them to
Right.
get their sidewalks cleaned
we
up.
give them a little nudge.
Very good.
And then the residential sidewalks, even though there aren't that many, is there an ordinance that's being enforced for that, or just
It's that same ordinance.
Mhm.
That same ordinance is
just
citywide.
covers business and
Yeah.
residential? And then are we
And no, we're
enforcing
not
it?
enforcing.
I know, but I have to ask every year.
Again, I think that'd probably be a Nilo and James thing. I think more than anything, they respond to if there's an issue.
Okay.
And again, people are typically pretty diligent about it. So,
Yeah, the interesting thing was when we had the 5-hour requirement in the ordinance, and there were several people who came to us and said, well, that means you, city, need to get all of the sidewalks that you're responsible for cleaned up within 5 hours, and you're not doing it, and we weren't doing it because we're out on the streets, and so but we did leave the trails in because I think, and that was something else that we heard, that people still wanted to get out and be able to walk for exercise and use the trails. So they're a lower priority, but eventually we will get there and get them cleaned up.
believe it or not,
Hope we
people
don't
really
need
like to
it.
walk their dogs at the parks even when it is nasty outside.
Yes.
So
What's it looking like tomorrow?
it'll be rain in the morning and then transitioning into
Are we salting?
the wintry mix.
Wintery mix, our favorite
Well,
word.
again, that's another challenge. I mean, when you get, the timing has to be right to put salt down, because if you put it down when it's raining, it all washes away.
Yeah.
So you gotta,
When is salt not effective? I didn't see that in the,
you get below about 10 degrees, and it starts having a hard time.
But it'll sit there and wait until it warms up.
that's true. Below 10, right there. You see it. You do have it.
It's in there somewhere.
All right, any other questions or discussions? Okay, thank you, John. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. And good luck tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, next up are Laura Smith with department updates.
Christy, do you have any updates? I don't think we have any for CDC this evening. Thank you.
Nice.
All right, then that concludes the Community Development Committee. Thank you.
7:24.
All right, well then we'll go ahead and call to order our Finance and Admin meeting for Wednesday, January 10th. A few things tonight. First up on the list is an update from Laura on the 2018 legislative program.
Yes, so
Shall I have a copy of?
each year, I think everybody got a copy. We've made some revisions, so I'll touch on that in just a second. But each year, we adopt a set of policies and priorities for the upcoming state legislative session. Doing this, most cities in Johnson County take this opportunity to be able to clearly communicate positions with the legislators. I think, as most of you know, it hasn't been a really, hot top of the list item for us for several years, and so that's something that as we have more interest or may have more interest in legislative issues or engaging in those one-on-one conversations with our legislators, that we can certainly adjust the timing, and I think in future years we will do that. So we'll push this back and be looking at our legislative program probably more in the November-December timeframe. But typically, we go through the city administrators and city managers in Johnson County, along with Johnson County, sit down and have several meetings to kind of go through the issues that we think will be affecting cities and counties in the upcoming session and what our priorities will be. And then each year we adopt kind of a joint, or the county adopts a joint city-county platform, which was included in your packet. So that will give you some idea. The county I did not include in your packet. If anyone's interested, the county has an additional about 8 to 10 pages of a legislative program in addition to those joint city-county issues, because they have so many other programs and services that they provide that are directly impacted by state funding in particular. So we really use it kind of as that opportunity, along with the issues that the league has identified. Again, I think you see the league's issues as they relate to cities and counties that are fairly long. So we've tried in Johnson County to kind of narrow that focus and really try to comment on the issues that we think will have some traction in a particular year. So this year, as I put the legislative program together, I had the county's program, Lenexa, Overland Park, Shawnee, Merriam, and Prairie Village, literally sort of all laid out and looking at where we had then those other areas of commonality and trying to put our program together. Also building on many of the same issues that have been included in our program in the past. So what I handed out this evening, so I'll be happy to talk about any of these specifically. I think most of them are really fairly self-explanatory. I did have, after the packet went out, realized that I was very unclear in the statement on the property tax lid. So you'll see some language there that I've added really to clean up a sentence that didn't make any sense in the version that you got on Friday. The property tax lid legislation that was passed required a vote if the city wanted to increase beyond the CPI or the growth index that we were left under. A really cumbersome, expensive process, and the timing of an election didn't match up well with the timing of the statutory requirements for our budget submission. So you were almost having to plan and think about this and be prepared for that 2 years out versus 1 year. So you'll see there that absent a complete repeal, which I think is what all the cities in the county would really like to see, that we would like to see a modification to allow for not a mandatory election, but that if the council wanted to raise the mill levy above that amount which was allowed by statute, that the citizens would have the opportunity to trigger an election with a protest petition. So the thought being, if we're really doing our homework and presenting and talking with our citizens the way we should be about any potential tax or fee increases in our budget, that we would have general support for those. So that still gives the citizens the protection of being able to trigger that election, but it doesn't make it mandatory for us. It gives us some greater degree of flexibility. The other items that were changed here are things that Solly had contacted me and suggested. And again, in future years, when we have the opportunity to bring this forward as a discussion item and then an action item, we'll have a different way to kind of look at those changes. But the addition to the plank on K-12 education financing, the issue on gun control, statewide energy policy, and infrastructure funding came at her suggestion. So I told her I would sort of prepare those, and then I'll let her kind of talk about her thoughts or suggestions as to why she'd like to see those included.
Talk on. I mean, if you've been following the week 1 of the legislative sessions on the education plank, there's already been a lot of talk about introducing a possible constitutional amendment. I've been at sessions with our state rep, state senator. They oppose that. I think the position of Northeast Johnson County is typically to oppose any such amendment. I think especially being a small border city, if you think about people choosing where to live, you want them choosing to live, on this side of the state line for our public schools, coming to a, inner suburb-like mission, rather than saying, I'm gonna have to go to private school anyway, so I'm just gonna go to Missouri. So I think it's important that we have a strong position on education. I think the constitutional amendment issue will specifically come up this session, and so that was why I recommended adding that. And then the gun control issue also, I think, is going to continue to be a hot topic in the state legislature. They rolled back some of the provisions of the previous gun legislation last session, removing guns in certain state hospitals and mental health hospitals. And I think that issue is going to appear again. And last year we actually had, Laura would be able to say if this is identical or very similar to this plank. And so I just felt that since it's still an ongoing issue, it's important that we include it again and say that this should be a local control issue.
That one I don't agree with.
I also don't agree with that one. I don't really know what problem it's trying to solve, and I don't know. I think
It's just for within city-owned facilities, which if you want to stop that, you can. You could put in a machine that you walk through.
Right, this plank's like any other. It's not just approving of things that the state has done. It's taking a position on things that we think the state should change too. And I think that the consensus among Northeast Johnson County and the legislature is that it should be rolled back to a local control issue. I'm not saying that the city needs to go one way or the other. That doesn't have any bearing on that. It's just saying that each city should get to decide.
Control it now. Right. If they install the equipment and man it when they're open, having people in here.
Right, which is largely cost prohibitive, especially if you're looking at a city like Mission.
Exactly.
But I'd be curious why you guys were good with it last year and now think we should take it out.
I don't think I
I
don't remember seeing anything about that last year, honestly.
It was in the program that was approved, but
I don't remember seeing that last year.
It was in our 2017 program, and close to the same form. In the Northeast Johnson County cities, Prairie Village was the only one that specifically spoke to that issue in this particular 2018 legislative program.
it's in either the league or the Johnson County statement or both. It's at least one of them, I think.
Probably, it's in the leagues, I know for sure.
Yeah, it's in the leagues.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't want to be the guy who obeys the city law when the bad guy is not obeying the city law, and he's in here with his gun, and I'm not.
Right, to your point, if somebody's got a gun that they shouldn't have anyway, this law doesn't solve any problems.
Exactly.
So all it does is discourage law-abiding gun-owning citizens from...
I mean, that's the argument on all gun control legislation. But, I mean, so I just wanted to present it, and obviously we can decide on it.
I prefer not to put that in there.
I would concur with Pat on that one, but
if the league does it in theirs, that's fine, that's up to them. But city of Mission, I think, we want to follow the state statutes. If they change it at the state level,
They rolled it back substantially last year, and everyone thinks it's going to be proposed again this year. So it's identifying our city's position in that debate so that our state rep and state senator know what our city's position is on local control of this specific issue.
How close is this language to what Prairie Village has proposed? Do you know, Laura?
I might get that question. So, their statement says, we strongly believe the ability to govern how firearms are possessed and transported throughout our community is a matter of local control. Local government should have the ability to regulate and enforce the possession and use of weapons within city-owned facilities, public parks, municipal pools, and city-owned vehicles. We urge state legislators to repeal House Bill number 2578 that restricts local government from enacting important gun safety measures in their communities.
So it went further.
Yeah, so theirs is even stronger than this position.
I don't like that either.
Yeah, I mean, I'm only one vote, but I don't know that, I just don't see what problem this is really trying to solve. And I think that at the city level, we probably want to stay out of this one as much as we can, personally. It's just my thought on it.
You got mine. Anybody else?
Others?
I like the language myself. I would prefer to keep this language in.
I agree. I just feel like maybe a little bit more time to chew on it and do a little bit more research myself. I'd like to.
So this language right here just says that we want to keep the control, whether it goes one way or the other.
Yeah,
So-
that doesn't mean that we would end up regulating.
Right.
It just means that it would be our decision whether to regulate as opposed to the state. I think that that's the way I mean, that's
Yeah.
the way this one is written, is it doesn't say we're going to regulate, it says.
It wouldn't give you the authority to do it.
So if the city
Just saying
or
you'd
the
like to be
state
able to.
wanted to regulate, we couldn't fight it.
Right, which is what the state does currently regulate, but it's saying that, we would support it,
So-
returning to local control as it was for quite some time.
With a number of things, though, I mean, the city can usually take a stronger stance than what is said at the state level, right? Or with the way that the state bill is written, is it totally prohibited?
Yeah.
Right,
It's
it's
state.
prohibited in this case.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you're right, absolutely right. In many cases, we cannot be less stringent.
Right.
We can be more, not in this case.
And that's the idea of restoring it to local control, is that it would be up to the city and our citizens to decide which way we wanted to go on that issue.
So, RC, I'm sorry, did you have a?
I am a firm believer that, just to kind of piggyback off of what Nick said, it doesn't really solve the problem of people who are in possession of a firearm. It shouldn't be. And then you've got the guy who's following the law who now can't. But I want to be able to control that, one way or another. So.
I mean, that point's fair. If it's just talking about control of that legislation at the city level, and we're making sure that, maybe I'm not reading it right, but
Yeah,
if that's all we're talking about, then I'm okay with that, and allowing us, having the option, if we wanted to vote on something more stringent than the state level, I guess I'm okay with that.
Well,
That doesn't mean that I'd be okay with voting on anything more stringent.
Right, yeah,
put
it's
this
not
in there,
it's not
gonna give you the
substantive
authority
policy.
to do it.
It's just,
States still
letting your
have that.
representatives know where you stand as a city.
Which is the point of this whole exercise, as I understand.
Yeah,
Right.
that is it.
And so I don't want to mislead the,
Right, I'm with you. I don't know that the way that it reads to me is really saying that, hey, we want to be able to make the decision and not have it totally up to the state, right? Because that's essentially what we're saying.
Yeah, that's why it says supports the local regulation, and that local
Yeah.
government should have the ability.
well, then.
But if there's better
then what,
language.
You gotta make it, the city governments can decide whether or not you can have a firearm in the city, and then what? They have
Well,
a-
yeah, that's where, if you get to city by city on issues like that, it can be a little
Right.
tricky too. Like,
You drive from this
drive
city to the next
through
one, now
Prairie
you're
Village, and all of a
illegal.
sudden you gotta make sure your gun's locked up in the trunk of your car instead. I don't know.
And I know this isn't what this is addressing, we're just saying it's.
Yeah, it's not on the substance, and that's why, I know Prairie Village took a specific stance on the particular bill, and that's why I thought it was better to just make it more about local control and targeting it towards that it should be a local decision one way or the other.
Is there a reason why it wasn't included this year and was last year, Laura?
Really because again, trying to find that more common voice, and it wasn't a common, sometimes when your programs and your platforms get too large, the issues that are important to you can get lost in the noise. And so it was really just a decision that I made, trying to cull out some of the things that we had in the past that didn't seem to really sort of rise up in some of the other cities in Northeast Johnson County. So that's really where it came from in the past. And I mean, I think we had some conversations in the last couple of years about the cost of, looking at the impacts of the state legislation and if we wanted to regulate firearms, and particularly in this building or, in other buildings, the community center, for example, the pool. So it wasn't really based on any specific direction. It was just trying to come up with a platform or a program for 2018 that kind of matched with others.
Yeah. Again, like Nick said, it's not, even if the state went back to that, it's not making anybody safer. If anything, it's making you less safe, in my opinion.
I think
Because they put the signs up, and the people that abide by the law take their guns back and lock them up in their car, and then they go in the building, and the guys that don't abide by the law, the people we're trying to be protected from, walk right in with their guns. So.
But that's not what this is saying. I mean, this is ultimately just saying that we have local control to say what could be said.
It's not taking a substantive position on whether there should be guns or not.
This just came up in this, I didn't see this before this meeting, so I think I need to really think through it a little bit more, but my gut instinct tells me if you get a state level permit to be able to carry a gun, there probably should be some state level rules that govern that.
I mean, I think we have a couple of options. We can leave it in this as it stands, or we can pull this off and have some more conversation around it. And we can always, if we decide to take a position that we want to report to the to our legislators, as specific legislation comes up or is discussed, we can do that. So if we feel like we need a little bit more time, and again, typically, going forward, our process will be different. It's a little bit unique this year, and kind of the timing of where we are. So. I think that's an option. We can either leave it here, or we can say, let's take it out, talk about it a little bit more, and then if we want to take a specific position later, there's nothing that precludes us from doing that outside of this program.
I think it'd be good to wait and kind of let us all do a little bit more research at home, and Debbie will be back and be able to give her 2 cents as well. I think that'd be good.
Laura, is that something that we could then include in the legislative meeting next week, or would it have to wait and be entirely separate from the legislative program? So do people have the week to look at it, and then we can decide whether to include it or not at that time, or does
you can certainly reintroduce it if you feel like you're comfortable. I think it just depends on do we want to do it that way? Do we want to bring it back through committee in February and potentially look at taking a position then? But yes, I mean, you could certainly make an amendment from during the legislative meeting as well.
And again, the way that's worded, says the city, the local government should have the ability to regulate and enforce possession and use of weapons within city-owned facilities. We do have that ability right now. You can do that, but as you said, it might be cost prohibitive to do that. But that's where you thought it was a major problem. I guess it becomes worth the cost to do it.
That's what I go back to, because when I don't really know what problem it solves.
Yeah, I'd
love to hear more about that, but I don't think there's really much of a problem to solve there, personally. I haven't seen strong evidence of one.
Be out of line to ask the chief his opinion on this?
No.
I don't know. Would it been?
No, absolutely not. So, I won't talk for Prairie Village, but I will tell you that just over 4 years ago, we had the ability to put in a safety plan with the state. The state didn't regulate what that safety plan was. You just had to turn it in, and you had 4 years to do it. Prairie Village turned that in. The city of Mission at that time chose not to. People have been allowed to open carry and carry concealed in this building. Community center, down at Public Works, the only building that was not allowed was the police station itself. So it was in the Charlotte Post recently. It was cost prohibitive for Prairie Village to do it. If Mission were to do it, it would mean that nobody other than law enforcement can carry a gun into this building for certain meetings. We can't man it all day 8 to 5, Monday through Friday when City Hall's open. That's not cost prohibitive either. So there are some options out there. It's my understanding Prairie Village has posted new signs that will prohibit open carry, but carry concealed when you have the permit that you're allowed to do that, including inside their courtroom. So, and we've taken extra measures too. The way that we sit now, you see me sitting out here in the audience, I used to sit up there and I was the only person that was here, which is why when we have these meetings now, since I can't see everybody who's coming in behind, we've got another person who's here. But you're absolutely right too. The bad guys bring guns where they shouldn't, and the good guys abide by the law.
Right.
So that's a conversation to have down the road. If I will tell you that I would rather not have anybody other than law enforcement have a gun here. Personal opinion. So, because if shooting starts, I don't want to be looking at who else is shooting. I want to focus on the threat and not worry about if Pat or the mayor or somebody else has a gun in here. I don't want to get shot. So, my opinion.
We don't want you to get shot.
You have a vest, the rest of us.
I've made it through a few times,
The
yeah.
other lucky.
So, but I have been approached by the mayor, our current mayor, about having some training coming up about active shooter and everything, and what is the plan. But that would be a work session that we would do. So, I'm glad to do that. Any other questions?
Thank you, Chief.
Yep, absolutely.
I mean, my preference would be that everyone takes a look at it this week and I can introduce it as an amendment at next week's full meeting. I think the idea of putting it off and having it be separate doesn't make a lot of sense if we're trying to convey sort of our unified position as a city to our state legislatures early in the session so that they can do with it what they want.
I think that'd be good.
Well, I would suggest, let me just suggest, if that's the case, then I would suggest we leave it in and that we update the packet, because if we leave the program without it, the public doesn't have the opportunity to see it and potentially respond to it. So if we think it's something we want to talk about next week, then I would suggest leaving it in from that standpoint, because that's the best way to communicate to the public, that rather than just a kind of surprise amendment where they didn't have the chance to react.
Makes sense to me.
John, did you have anything? You had your hand up, so I didn't.
Well, I was just saying, it's like our building. I mean, people can walk into our building. Well, I mean, we had a vendor come in one time and he had a gun in his pocket and fell on the floor. So, I mean, the other question that we've gotten a lot with the updated personnel manual is from employees. Because now, employees can also,
They can carry them in the truck.
Mm-hmm.
they can,
City truck I'm talking about.
yeah, I mean, our guys would be out breaking asphalt and
Yep.
carry a gun. So, I mean, it's a lot of questions, and it's a hot topic, and I understand it now. Brent called the other day just to clarify what that meant, and we were told what that meant, and I would prefer that our guys didn't carry. I mean,
Right.
but
Yeah, I mean, it just adds a whole other element when you're,
but
with your co-worker and the work that you're
Angry
focused on.
employees.
Yeah.
Did we have any increases in any of our insurance as a result of employees being able to carry?
No.
Yeah. What you don't want is the angry employee going out and getting his gun out of the car and coming back in when nobody else has a gun. I mean, I'm just saying. You've seen those situations on television.
Well, and there's all kinds of hypotheticals you can get into. I just think, at the
Right.
end of the day,
I'm just saying those you've actually seen happen.
sure.
It would be nice if the only people that had guns were the police, in my opinion.
I think if you're getting to go through the legal process of doing it the right way, if you're getting a permit, like a driver's license, that's good at a state level and transferable to some other states based on the policy that's in place, that you probably do need some higher level governance on that.
And I agree with the chief that, and I think it's what you were just trying to say, that it'd be nice if only the police had guns, but you don't know. And if you had if you changed the law, you wouldn't know. I mean, bad guys do bad things. Just saying. Okay.
So the next one that I had proposed was the statewide energy policy. I think I saw this in the league statement. It just seemed like as a council, watching the meetings over the past year, there's been a lot of talk of sustainability and energy. I know Nick's brought up solar panels, et cetera, before, and so I just thought it would be good to signal that, you know, we agree with looking at a, you know, comprehensive, full spectrum, you know, renewables, all energy resources as a state.
I'm okay with that.
And then the infrastructure funding, same thing. It's obviously been a big topic. You know, it's a big cost for cities, and you know, we've gotten to get some county grants and state funding. So I think just signaling our support for that continuing or expanding.
Yeah,
is
that's
important.
already in the other, Kansas and the other one.
Yes, yes, and in ours it's in a little, it creeps in some different ways. So if you go on page 2, the support maintenance of state funding specifically, we call out maintaining the motor fuels tax
Yeah.
there, which is a big, you know, that's $250,000 to $300,000 a year for us towards our street program, which is very significant. So this one I think is just more broadly written, and certainly, you know, expands that to the stormwater, particularly, that I think is good as well.
So in this particular thing, this is going to the state of Kansas.
Yes.
Do we want to say increase federal and state funding?
Oh, as opposed to just state?
I mean, the state can't increase the federal funding.
Yeah.
We can take that out. I think this is copied directly from the league, but we can certainly.
Is it?
Yeah. We can take, there's no
Well,
pride of
I was
authorship
just
here.
wondering
Yeah.
if that-
No, but I think that makes sense. It just depends on, I don't really think there's federal stormwater funding. I mean,
we
really
do
in that
support it if we
list.
can get it.
Yeah,
Right,
okay,
exactly.
So I'm okay with leaving that. It struck me that this is going to state. That's
Yeah,
why I
we will-
mentioned it.
I'm okay either way.
So maybe take out federal?
You don't have to. I was just,
And not that there's necessarily any change, I was just curious, I kind of asked you, Laura, but was there any talk about the potential of moving the elections again?
Yes,
Or-
I think it's going to continue. We're going to continue to have that conversation.
I know there were a lot of concerns brought up with the fall election cycle about partisan influence and nonpartisan elections, but I'm just wondering, at the league level, I guess, what they've really discussed so far. Maybe
What did
just
you-
follow that one a
It
little
came
bit.
up at the State House today too.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big influence in the elections, and it is a big deal.
When you said that felt like there was some more partisan influence in the local elections, what did you mean by that? I just wanted some clarity on that.
Well, I think you saw a lot of people that were campaigning in nonpartisan elections and attending events that were partisan-sponsored events, campaigning along with partisan-sponsored people.
Okay.
In a lot of municipalities, in Johnson County, and I'm sure throughout the rest of the state as well. I can only speak to what I saw around here, but I know that there's some other things I read about that too. And it's just a concern that was raised by a lot of people, some of the neighboring cities. So,
legitimate.
yeah.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Anything else we want to add in? I have the ability, obviously we don't hire lobbyists. Many of the other cities in Johnson County, the larger cities particularly, but even the city of Merriam hire lobbyists who spend time in Topeka. There's one that works pretty commonly across several jurisdictions. And the county hires a lobbyist as well. And they, for the last couple of years, have made to all of the managers and administrators, their lobbyists, their weekly update available to all of us who would want to participate on a conference call. So it gives me the ability to sort of log in on a Friday afternoon and kind of get the weekly update and pass that along. So, and there's always, if there's something that pops up that requires more immediate action, both from the league and just from our network, we have the opportunity to be able to respond to that. So I think in the past, I can't think of the specific issue, but there may be an occasion where it doesn't line up with our meeting schedule, and so we may bring something to the council, draft a letter and look to see, do we have some general consensus to kind of take a stance on a particular issue. So we do have that flexibility, or had taken advantage of that in the past. That's it, right?
Is there a recommendation?
To take it to council?
So we're going to bring it to council
Okay.
So you're right,
and then discuss the.
not consent.
Not
Right.
consent.
Oh,
All right, the next item we had up on the list was a resolution for the destruction of certain records. Martha's got no reports on that.
Every year, council passes a resolution that designates specific records that may be destroyed. We are very careful and conservative in destroying records and follow our resolution. A few years ago, we did kind of a major catch-up on getting rid of things that we don't need anymore. So I think going forward, it'll be much easier to make sure that we're maintaining them as we should. I would say that we do keep anything that's we feel of historical value, all our packets, resolutions, ordinances, all of those we maintain permanently. And when we do have questions about a record that's not specifically outlined with a particular date that it can be destroyed, we oftentimes look to other cities that, I know the city of Topeka has a very extensive records retention policy that sometimes gives good guidelines on how to move forward with that. So.
Well, I think we should take that to council and do it.
Probably just on
On the
consent.
consent.
I would think so.
All right, are there any other department updates?
I know the chief had one he'd like to share.
So last month, we talked about overhiring, and I had told you all that I would come back and let you know occasionally. This is one of those occasionally times that I wanted to come and report kind of where we are. So last Thursday, we had 4 people start the police academy. One of them speaks Spanish, which is the only person downstairs that speaks Spanish, which is good. We had an officer from Edwardsville who used to work here 6 years ago and came back to work, and will be done with his field training the end of this month. We also hired an officer from Kansas City, Kansas. She has 6 years on over there. Her first day in field training was today. She'll be done by the end of February. And then we hired another female deputy from the sheriff's office. She has not ever been on the street, but she is certified, so there's no police academy, and she starts the end of this month and should be on her own by the end of April. So the bad news department is Tim Gift is leaving tomorrow, and he's been here for 6 years. He's one of our gang officers. He's a firearms instructor, active shooter, and is going to work the jail out of the sheriff's office. So long story short, that puts us at 31, and we were authorized for 29. And as soon as I find that other diamond in the rough that's a certified person, then I'll backfill that 31st position, and then we've got more breathing room. I do have an officer that has been deployed 3 times. Works midnights, Tanner, the one that's 6'11" and a half. I don't want to leave his half out. So, but as soon as he went into the National Guard, they're looking to deploy him again in February to Afghanistan. So there's a 50-50 chance he may or may not go. So we'll see. But if so, then we'll just hold and wait for a year until he comes back. But we're close.
Who the hell wants to go to Afghanistan if you're 6'11"?
It's hard to hide.
No one.
Where do you hide? for God's sake?
Exactly.
Who wants to go to Afghanistan?
I don't think it's Afghanistan, it's just anywhere. Where do you hide anywhere, right? It's 6, 11 and a half.
But anyways, I know it's been painful. We've talked about that and how short we've been on the street and everything, and things are starting to look up. Now it's investigations that is short manpower a little bit. We've always had a part-time person who has gone back. When I say part-time, you get to go back for 12 to 18 months and learn about investigations, go back to the street, take that experience with you. Officer Bieberbach, this last Sunday, transferred back to patrol to help out on patrol, and his time was up anyway. So now Dan Madden and the investigations guys are a person short, and they'll be that way until
You want me to come in and help out?
he
No.
passed the background. Okay.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
Just two other things quickly. I'm gonna, hopefully tomorrow, be sending out an email. The mayor and I have been talking about options for some retreats and some goal-setting sessions. We'd like to get those scheduled as soon as we can so that we are ready to go into our budget season, maybe with some more strategic goals than what we've had the last couple of years. So I'll be sending an email about just preferred dates and times and formats for that. And then just a reminder that there will be a reception for Mayor Schoengert tomorrow from 4:30 to 6:30 at the community center. So comments at 5:30. So I hope you can join us for that. And that's all I have this evening. Oh, I will say, in your mailboxes is the magazine from the league, and there's a nice section in here actually that says you've been elected, now what? But there's some there are actually some good information, better than what I've seen them do in the past, on basics of core, coma, league resources, some of those other kinds of things. So take a few minutes. I know Martha and I were flipping through that today, so some good information out there.
Anything else? No, I would say we can move to adjourn.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you all. And just beware